All right, Jake Rowe, somewhat of a slow week on the Georgia team front. Huge news with Dylan Raiola committing to the Dogs and that team scavenger hunt coming up this weekend. But as far as this year's team goes and Georgia football as a whole is concerned, there's been a lot of scuttlebutt on social media about this 2019 LSU against the 2021 Georgia team, this hypothetical matchup. And 2019 LSU is getting a lot of the favored opinions there. And I'm not sure that I necessarily disagree with that. There's a lot of talented offense on that team. And Georgia did have one game where they struggled against Bama in the SEC championship game. But when you do look at that defense for Georgia, I do think it's worth a second look at least before assuming that Joe Burrow and company would just roll over them.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I don't think they would roll over them. I think Georgia would cause them some problems. Heck, I thought Georgia caused them problems in the 2019 SEC championship game. You and I sat beside each other in the press box for that game. I don't know if you remember that, but
yeah, I recall it.
Yeah, I mean, and then also, I mean, I think in that game, if Georgia's offense would have been able to kind of keep the defense off the field a little bit and move the ball, which I think the 2021 offense could do, then Georgia maybe could have limited LSU a little bit longer. I think they scored 37 points in that game. They had scored like 19 at the half. Georgia did a pretty good job in that game defensively, and then kind of the dam broke. That 2021 Georgia defense, I haven't been shy about how I feel about that 2019 LSU team, especially when you get a quarterback that catches his own pass for a big gain or for a solid gain in that. I mean, you did everything
when that
right.
Play happened, you knew it was LSU's
Yeah,
night.
That wasn't Georgia's day. But I will say this. I'm real bullish on that Georgia defense too and how special it was. I mean, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt, Trayvon Walker. That's a lot of first round talent. And a lot of those guys, were around, not Jalen Carter, but some of those other guys were around in 2019, but they weren't the players they are now. Or were in 2021. So I think it'd be a heck of a game. I probably agree with Lane Kiffin, honestly. I just think that LSU offense was generational. It was special. I mean, they played the number 3 scoring defense in the country that year in the national championship game and kind of just tore them apart.
I mean, they won in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. That's pretty much the watermark for me. If a team can go in there and embarrass Bama in Tuscaloosa, that's pretty solid.
And you were dealing with more of a prime Alabama than from a defensive standpoint. They took some steps back in 2021 and 2022, but that was kind of prime Alabama defense a little bit, maybe toward the end of the prime. So that LSU team was legit.
For sure. Moving on to another real Georgia opponent, Hugh Freeze apparently has the offseason team of the century right now. He's been working the transfer portal. He's trending on Twitter each and every day. I don't know why. Maybe it's that Apple connection, and he's just influencing the social media world as well and leveraging the Auburn Apple alum connection there with Apple CEO. What's his name? I'm blanking on his name.
I'm blanking on it too. I was trying. That's where my wheels were turning there for a second. Does Apple make burner phones?
Tim Cook.
Okay.
So maybe Tim Cook is just telling Elon Musk, hey, let's get Auburn football trending. But do you think it's because of the excitement that Hugh Freeze is back in a Power 5 school, position of influence, at a team like Auburn, that everyone outside of Auburn's rivals in college football seems like they're desperate for Auburn to get back on the map because that means that Alabama and Georgia have a challenger again? Or do you think that this Hugh Freeze hype is a little bit overblown at this phase in the game?
I know why Hugh Freeze is hyped the way he is, and it's because of those 2 wins over Alabama. I mean, that's the big one. I think that part of it is also he had the scruples, he had the stones to cheat the way he did, and it was blatant and it was obvious, and he put on Twitter, come at me, bro. So I get all that. And maybe that makes people think, well, he's going to be brazen and do the same thing in the age of NIL where people are still going to end up pushing the envelope. Cheating's not going to go away now that cheating's legal. But ultimately, I'm not a big Hugh Freeze guy. I'm just not. I thought he did some good things at Ole Miss, but no better than what David Cutcliffe and no better than what Lane Kiffin have done. And those guys are good coaches too, but I don't think anybody's going nuts about them, at this point in time. I think he's got a chance to do some things there at Auburn. I think he'll definitely be better than Brian Harsin, but I think somebody said it earlier. What did he do to be considered the savior of Auburn football? He took the job. And that's kind of what goes down there. And it'll get better under Hugh Freeze. I still think he's going to struggle with his in-state rival, and I still think he's going to struggle big time with Georgia.
Yeah, that's Georgia's SEC road opener. The SEC opener is South Carolina in week 3 for the Dogs. Georgia travels to Auburn, playing on the Plains there on September 30th, which still just really doesn't seem natural to me. I think that Auburn, that environment, week 5, depending on what they've done to that point in the season, I think there could be some considerable hype going into that game. I'm not saying that they'll beat Georgia, but I do think they could be a little bit peskier than maybe we imagine they will be as we meet here on May 18th. There's something about that game, something about Hugh Freeze taking on Kirby Smart. I'm not saying I'm buying into the Hugh Freeze hype, hook, line, and sinker, but that's a pretty tough road atmosphere, and that will be the first tough road atmosphere for presumably Carson Beck as Georgia's quarterback. So we will see about that.
Well, here's the thing, Wes, and I don't want to extend this too long, but last 2 seasons, Georgia's kind of had a thunderclap game. It was Oregon in game 1 last year, thunderclap. Everybody heard it. Everybody saw it. It was disgusting. I think the Arkansas game might have been that thunderclap game for Georgia in 2021. If Auburn can win a couple games early, maybe go into that Georgia game. I don't know how many. I think 4 games before that. If they can go in there 3-1, maybe 4-0. I'm not sure who they have early in the year. That can be Georgia's thunderclap game. Like that can set up as, hey, go into Auburn, take kind of an upstart. That maybe some people are, they're the trendy pick to upset you, and just whip up on them pretty good.
So Auburn opens up with UMass at home. Then they travel to Cal. But Hugh Freeze is really thanking everyone in the administration office for scheduling that one, traveling all the way out to the West Coast. Then they come back home and play Samford on the Plains. Then they play at Texas A&M the week before Georgia. So you never know. Maybe Jimbo and company beat up on them a little bit, or they expend a little bit of that SEC energy before they welcome Georgia to the Plains there. Let's wrap up with something that our On3 writer Nick Schultz has put together, the top 100 players in college football for the 2023 season. Georgia has one guy in the top 10. I think everyone can probably guess who that is. It's
Carson
Brock Bowers.
Oh, sorry.
Not yet. Not yet for Carson Beck. Brock Bowers at number 4, behind Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3, Drake May at 2, and Caleb Williams at 1. Really quick as we wrap up, Jake Rowe, is Brock Bowers too low on Mr. Schultz's list in your opinion?
No, I think that's about right. I mean, he plays tight end, and so I'm never going to jump on the table and make this massive argument that he's the best player in college football. Do I think he is? Yeah, but I'm not. I mean, ultimately, anything inside the top 10 for a tight end, you're elite, and you can just kind of leave it at that. And I would do what Brock Bowers would do here, which is ignore it all and
not say anything.
Not say anything at all. And if I do say it, be very terse in the process and score touchdowns.
I'll say this, man. I'm not sure he should be above Marvin Harrison Jr. because every Georgia fan saw how dynamic he could be. I think I have a problem with him being behind Drake May. I think Drake May maybe and Brock Bowers should switch places. Caleb Williams, obviously the reigning Heisman champ. You can't really take him outside of number 1. But Brock Bowers is a generational player, and Georgia is lucky to have him. Jake Rowe, where can people find more of what you have going on this weekend and moving on into these Georgia spring and summer months?
DawgsHQ.com over at On3. That works. You can follow us at DawgsHQ on Twitter. Follow me at Jake M. Rowe on Twitter. And it's hopping, man. We're excited over at DawgsHQ, doing a lot of good things. Rusty's flying around. Roos is flying around as always. Palmer can't be outworked. doing your thing on the video, growing this channel, whatever needs to be done, Wes does it, and we appreciate that. So it's the place to be. You need to come on over. Like I said this morning on Twitter, $1 for 6 months. It's basically sanctioned theft at this point. Like it's basically the FCC saying, okay, do it.
I can't believe it's allowed either. Y'all have a great weekend.